Go ahead and record. We start in 30 seconds. 7 use cases to. Are you going to vape during the whole webinar? Because I think that'd be awesome.
Don't do that.
I will not vape.
Charge you $50 every time.
That was the last puff.
So let me see here. Then Ali, how do I pronounce your last name?
As you read it, Habibzadeh.
Habibzadeh. Good.
Yep.
Ashley Berman-Hale. Excellent. Okay. And the breakout room is going to be during the Q&A session. So I'll get that straight.
And I don't even have to be witty until accessibility. I love it. Thank you for taking the intro, Ali.
No worries.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started and start the webinar, and we can go. I'll do some housekeeping in the beginning and hand it off to you all to go through everything. Okay, 8, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. This is Lauren Baker with Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJ webinar with our partners, Lumar. Today we have Ali Habibzadeh and Ashley Berman-Hale, who will be going over 7 use cases to level up website optimization with website intelligence. And we all know that we've been talking about all kinds of intelligence recently. Artificial intelligence or website intelligence or whatever it may be. So I'm really looking forward to today's presentation. I'll let the two of you say hi, and then I'm going to go over some housekeeping while we have the rest of our registrants jump on.
Hey, everyone from Colorado, sunny, but a little chilly.
Ali from London, United Kingdom. Cool.
Excellent.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be joining us from. Thank you for joining me and Ashley. I am a CTO at Lumar, joined by Ashley. She runs our professional services team. Thank you, Ashley. And we're going to, just before we kind of get started with what we are talking about, just for us to be able to fine-tune our content a little bit and more suitable for the audience, it would be good if all of you could attend and participate in our first question and poll and tell us in the organization that you work at the moment, how many of you feel or been asked to give more priority to web accessibility? So if you are someone...
We've launched the poll, and if everyone can go ahead and vote right now, go ahead and share the responses before you get started. And just a reminder to all attendees, while the presentation is going on, as you have questions, go ahead and ask them in the Q&A box, and feel free to chat and have discussion in our chat box as well. Your questions for the Q&A box we're going to save for the Q&A of the webinar after the presentation, and then we're also going to have a special breakout room on today's webinar as well. So feel free to ask those questions, and we've had quite a bit of answers come in for the poll. Would you like me to go over them for you?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Let's see them.
So yeah, let's close it, and I'm going to share. At present, how much of a priority is website accessibility for your organization? 59% high, right? 27% medium, 12% low, and then 2% not a priority at all.
That's wonderful responses. We weren't expecting that.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. I feel like 10 years ago, maybe 2% would have been high. So I love it.
Possibly. So I'm going to go ahead and jump off, and then I'll be back on for the next poll question as well.
Cool. Let's continue. So that's wonderful to hear that the audience is paying a lot of attention and the organization to accessibility. But we want to talk about how broad and how extended this universe is. If you are someone in 2023 looking after a website, you have a host of different tools and utilities that you are probably using, depending on your level of expertise, in order to be successful running that website. You might be using AxScore, Pally, or multitude of other accessibility auditors. You might be running lighthouse performance testing to make sure performance and best practices of the website are followed. You could be using Burp Suite or OWASP Zap or Sneak for getting your hands on the possible vulnerabilities or security issues that your website has, and a host of other tools that would do content analysis for you, and other maybe things that we don't know, maybe code quality checking. So each of these tools, they will run the audits at a, maybe it's integrated with your continuous integration and delivery system. Maybe you run these checks on demand. Nevertheless, they will request your pages. They will run on as many website pages as you want to test. That's going to put cost and load on your infrastructure. So you are basically requesting those pages multiple times at different times in different processes and generating that extra cost, as well as having to manage the vendor, the contracts, the billing, etc., etc. So it's a very fragmented world that to have all this your hands on all of this data in order to make sure your website runs well from every aspect. And this is something that we have been working on at Lumar for the first time ever, in order to unify and consolidate this world with same format of the data, with same APIs, same applications, formatting, filtering, segmenting, and digesting the insights that you get from all these different disciplines under the same framework. And we're going to go through several use cases that you might encounter as someone who's looking after health of a website in 23. And with the beginning of that, obviously, because of the poll, we will be putting a bit more emphasis on accessibility, which my colleague Ashley is going to explain a bit more on.
Hey, everyone. Just to give you some backup, I'm sure you already caught on to this, but Ali is our data guy, right? So he's working on a lot of the engineering and how things work. And my job is to interface with the devs and engineers, but also the clients. So you'll hear kind of two different points of view there, but that's the whole idea, is we're bringing it all together. But we had to put accessibility up front, A, because we see it's so important to so many business, and B, it's really impactful and important to us. So like Ali said, we're developing new software capabilities around that, as well as just talking to people in the company, talking to our clients, and understanding the human side of it. We really see it as a huge opportunity, but also a really big liability if we get it wrong. The trifecta that I usually use is, first, I like to get people interested for the human element. Like, let's do it to be more inclusive. And you know what? If that doesn't work, if that's not incentive enough, great. Let's do it for the economics. So on the next slide, I'll show you an example of how that works. And if that doesn't incentivize you, even though most people like money, we're going to do it in order to avoid litigation. So you can see at the stats on the right. Last year, there were 4,000 ADA lawsuits filed in the US. That's a lot. It keeps going up every single year. And it's going up because it really affects so many different people. So when we talk about accessibility, I know in SEO in general, we talk a lot about visual impairments, but there are a lot of other ones too. So it could be auditory, motor, cognitive, neurological, speech, especially when there's smart speakers, things like that. And they can be permanent, they can be progressive, or they can be temporary. So maybe you temporarily lost your voice. Like if you are interviewing so many people like Jamie did last year in Brighton, she lost her voice for like 2 weeks after that. That's a temporary disability that affected how she accessed the internet. Or it could be that you broke your arm. Or it could be that you had a baby. Like having one kid on your hip while trying to navigate a smartphone is hard as hell, and I will not accept any arguments to that. So it's not an if, it's a when. And we know that it affects a lot of people in the world, 1 billion. Those folks have a thirst for information, want to access the same features and products as everyone else, and are ready to participate as a customer or client for you.
Very true. You can have the best SEO for your pages, all the SEO investment, but if you're not accessible, you won't be converting.
Yeah, you're right. Because it's not just about, it used to be, I don't know, I used to have this thing I could lean on. So before 2010, so the first ADA law in the US was 2008, and it took 10 years to be put into place. But we used to say, like, treat Google like this 4-year-old drunk toddler with an anger management issue, because that's sort of where the bots were. And now, like, Now bots are a little more like 12-year-old angsty teens, maybe no longer have the drinking problem, but the visual, being able to scan something without sight and being able to use a screen reader really helped the bots too. And so we would lean on it as just like a help SEO sort of thing, but that's changed. And I really want to show, like, I'm excited to show these examples. The first one, the screen actually comes from baymard.com, which did some really cool accessibility benchmarkings. But if you can see that, that's Kohl's, and that's an order form that they have. And part of accessibility are making sure that you have the right form fields and the right inputs. So maybe I was on the site, it was really accessible, I was shopping, I bought 17 things, $300 worth, and I'm ready to check out. When I get to their checkout page, they are missing some of their form fields. So I don't know when I tab through, where I put my credit card or my zip code or my name. So they did a really good job on the site, but that last like 9/10 of the mile is preventing them from actually spending money, because you see where it says card reader, that may not be in a way that they can read. And then the form fields don't tell you where to add anything. So you get stuck. And that's a heartbreak. Like, we've had a client who was struggling with conversions. They kept having drops in their basket. They did everything. They changed the color, they changed the content, they nixed questions, they changed the design. Nothing was working until they then focused on the accessibility and realized that, 10% of the people on their site that we're trying to convert were having a hard time. And we want, if they're there and they're shopping, like, let's get them the last way there. All right, this second example is a personal irksome one. So there's someone here watching. Jessica, hello. This feels very Colorado, but I picked REI because we're all a bunch of outdoorsy folk here. But if you look at their menu, they have a lot of stuff. That beige menu up top are all the different categories. All the white links down there, white page, black links, are just like subcategories for one of those flyouts. So I was looking for the deals under 50. I'm cheap, but I would have to, if they didn't have skip to main navigation or skip to content, if I didn't want to see this menu, I would have to tab through on my keyboard every single one of those links, which is like 170 something to get to the deals under 50. So there's even tiny things like that as part of the WCAG2 that you can see that really do take it not from just being barely readable to actually being accessible and friendly, like to create a really good positive user experience.
Wonderful. So everything, 90% of the time, when we are talking about SEO, security, accessibility, we are discussing aspects of the HTML page in question. But as we all are aware, that the web is not a single resource environment. It's not just about the HTML. You have style sheets, you have JavaScript attached to that page, you have images, you have videos, you have audios, you have maps, many things, font files that go into this. And most of the time, and this is something that's happened to me recently, is that we were doing a performance benchmarking on a website with Google Lighthouse. JavaScript load was recording okay. Web Vitals were reporting not too bad, but still the rendering was slow. The rendering of the page is really slow. Page is not that big. It doesn't have too many elements. And we are kind of quickly drawn to the way the style sheet is structured, that maybe there are elements in there that is causing this slow rendering of the page. The usual suspects in a slow rendering due to CSS flaw is using lots of wildcard characters. We all know this. Putting asterisks in a lot of selectors is bad because you're targeting all your elements at the same time. And if you use it multiple times, you're targeting all of them multiple times. Overdoing it with transitions, animations, or if you use a lot of import statements, so you have this sequential loading of style sheet documents, which block the rendering of the HTML. They get in the way because they are higher priority considered by browsers. So now we have, in order to automate, in order to get your hands on these metrics, in order to be able to filter your CSS, you need a web crawler that now doesn't just parse the HTML in order to extract metrics, but it needs to parse any type of resource. It needs to parse the CSS style sheet and give you the ability to query your data by CSS selector when it contains wildcard, when the document import or the initial directives contain import. You want to get those, and you need a type of crawler that parses, interprets, and allows you to morph the data and dig down into the style sheet documents. And that is exactly not only the expansion that we have been working on in terms of different disciplines, but also expansion on different types of resource. So you'll be able to not only get your hands on a parsed version of your CSS metrics, but also traverse similarly to looking to get me all my JavaScript functions that may return a number, or give me all the font files that I had that may be missing font weight 600, and you want to be using that. And font files are actually a wonderful kind of little area of web optimizations with, I'm sure Ashley is going to talk a little bit more about that, but multi-resource and as well as multidiscipline.
Oh, I'm going to tie it together here. Use web-safe fonts, please. Accessibility part. But yeah, we've seen sites uncovered by the team here where they were just using dozens, if not hundreds of fonts that were loading up on every page, even though they were not needed. But somebody got creative one day and tossed that file in there. So it's also one of those kind of sneaky ones that I think get left out when you're auditing everything. Fantastic. So I love performance. So I let Ali I didn't let him. I asked him to please give me this slide because I love talking about speed and images. But this is another area when we think about website intelligence and having almost a command center where people from all different disciplines in your company can look and work together. I think images really pulls a lot of that together. So we know that images are fantastic. Possibly. They can be really, really beneficial for the site and engaging. They can also be really damaging if not done well, not just for performance, but for other reasons as well. And they're also expensive. Like to have really good, unique photos, that takes time. That can take software. It takes energy. You have to load them up. You have to maintain them. Like it's tough. And we know that people like pictures, right? And so it's not one of those, well, usually it's not one of those optional things. Like you need to bring a really rich page experience to your clients. And search engines know that. Bing was very vocal at one point, like they straight up said, like having multimedia on a page is a ranking factor. I think Google's a little quieter about that, but I thought it was interesting because they wanted the most robust and rich pages. So you want a site with images. We know images can be troublesome. So my first questions would be, how is your company cataloging and understanding images today? Because generally when we bring up this question, we hear, well, we know how to load them and we know when they break. Like that's a fantastic start, but do you have some editorial guidelines around file names? Are you able to then crawl and see which have alt attributes or titles and which don't? Are we able to go ahead and see which ones are lazy loading and which ones aren't? Because in a lot of content management platforms or even homegrown CMSs, what we've seen is that there may be a rule, but that may miss parts of the site. So you may say, oh, yeah, my content management platform loads lazy by default. I bet you I can find an image that doesn't, right? There are always little exceptions to that rule. And then a really fun thing that we've been looking at lately, oh my gosh, you can tell we're party animals, Ellie, that this is the fun thing we've been looking at, but being able to crawl and see how the source size of the image is different than the rendered side. Because you can see a rendered size that looks like just totally appropriate for a mobile screen, but we can go in there and see the source size and say like, all right, Ellie, your image is this big. Like my phone is not this big. Like I appreciate you loading this for me. I love high quality images, but instead of forcing me, the user or the browser to resize, can you just give me an appropriate image size? So little things like this creep in that, you know, if you have a good hold on that and can report out and can catalog in that way, it's going to allow you to be a lot more strategic as a company. And images are big. They're not just eye candy. I popped in Google Discover and Google Lens here because, man, these two features are just so awesome. So if you have an Android phone, you're probably very familiar with Google Discover, but they're pushing it out elsewhere. And on your phone, if you swipe right, way too old for the Tinder life there, but if you swipe right, you're going to see news stories and images come down that are tailored fit to you. There's one tiny meta tag you can toss on your site-wide, that if you have an appropriate image, Google can then pull in like a bigger spotlight image to those stories. We've done that with clients. It's a 15-minute fix and they see a massive uplift. And then for Google Lens, this is my favorite feature that Google put out a couple years ago, where you can actually take your phone and snap pictures and search by just images, and we're talking not standard images like real life. I can take a picture of my dog and it can see what species it thinks it is. I can be at Home Depot and take a picture of a reciprocal saw, what I was doing last weekend, and I can see everywhere else that sells it and all the different prices. I love doing estate sales. I can go in and snap a piece of art glass and see potentially where and when it was made and if it's valuable. So the way that you can take advantage of this, in addition to cataloging your images, is to make sure all of those attributes are appropriate. And it's interesting because, yeah, this is kind of a tech SEO job, but who are contributing to the images on your site? Is it your marketing folks? Do you hire an outside firm? Is it your design folks? You should all be working on that together, because tech SEO here becomes a multiplier. No matter what effort you put forth for images, being friends with your tech SEO folks and your engineers are going to help you get more mileage out of them.
Yeah, actually, Google Lens is a perfect example of it's easy to think that the only way people interact with the content of your website is to look at the whole page through a browser. And that's not true. Website contents are indexed with tools used in many different ways, and some intended and some obviously unintended, which kind of brings me to my next point of clickjacking, a nasty little trick hackers have where they put their malicious code or button as a transparent layer right on top of your beautifully designed content, which your users know and love. They may put that in an iframe and they start hosting in a different domain in order to abuse and capture that click, but in fact the user is clicking on something else. And obviously you need to be able to have a audit on the tool running all the time, not just this, but many different vulnerabilities. If your X-frame options header is limiting the rendering of that page just to a particular affiliate or partner, that you want only them to be able to load this, or you just you want to block iframing your content and you just want the affiliate to redirect to that content. Or maybe you want to capture, if you're using the correct CSP content security directive to achieve the same thing. There are different ways of doing that, and this is amongst some of the practical kind of audits that we have been bringing as a part of Lumar security for you. Yeah. You're on mute, I think, Ashley.
I can't believe you did that to me. I did it to myself. Yeah, I get excited a bit about web security too, because the thing is, it's like an ounce of prevention, right? Because if you're not on top of it and something happens, it could have a really big hit on your company. I'm guessing that if you're here, you work for a company where a big percentage of what makes that company profitable is what goes on the web. So got to keep close tabs on that. Don't wait for it to be a problem. Which leads me into using web intelligence. So I kind of talked about how we got a lot of folks coming in on all these different random sides to make a website successful. So I'm going to talk about the devs on one side, and then I'm going to use the example of marketers on the other side. But for this first one, errors are expensive. Like, they're expensive to find post live, right? Have you ever had that experience where someone might push the site live and then all the SEOs go on it and they have to go and scan the entire site and do all their favorite tricks to see what got messed up. Yeah, that was a way of life for me for a full dozen years. And we know that having the SEO spend that time and then having the devs have to go in and fix live and then have to push live again, like, those costs really add up. And they can be, a multiplier in terms of the liability to the business. So what is most important is that if you can get the devs and the SEOs together pre-prod and agree on some standards and run some pre-prod scans, you're going to be able to catch most of those. We have a product that we built just around that yes, there's the technical part of like, hey, let's find the errors, but there's also a very human part of how do we bring devs and SEOs together better. Like, I think HubSpot did this really well with marketers and SEOs, but there's a space where we can get those two groups talking just a little bit more, because devs are our ultimate ally. They can help us get things done, right? We have to understand their frustrations too. So website intelligence has to extend from not just the live site and not just marketers and SEOs, but all the way pre-prod with devs, understanding what challenges they have and how to catch errors. And then they can really be a part of that trended data story. So we can see how all the effort and having that sort of command center can pull forth and just improve the site health and I hope people's lives a little bit over time. Maybe that's overreaching, but tech debt is real and it's hard to fix errors that you've already pushed and it's a little discouraging. So we want to get in front of that. All right, the next one I'm going to pop into is marketing. So for there, you heard me say it already, but tech SEO is a multiplier. So there's really this spot where a company oftentimes tend to split and see website health as completely separate from marketing, and it's not. And part of why I think that it's not is that if you're paying for anything that marketing does, technical SEO and technical site health, they're going to be able to get more value from that. So we talked about images already, so visuals. It can also be banners. So if you're creating big sale banners, have we optimized them in a way where the words are easy to pull from, where they're the right size so we know we can get ranked for certain things? It's content. Really good content, again, is expensive, whether you're writing it and researching it or you have someone doing it for you. You know that if Google can't see that content appropriately, it doesn't rank. So what can we do to keep and maintain that design that marketers want and UX wants, but in a way that the content is readable? Having data on that is going to be very important. Same with campaigns. I love to go find old campaigns that haven't been retired and don't have terms attached to them. Made a lot of jokes about this in our dry run about there's a documentary right now called Pepsi, Where's My Jet? And it has to do with a campaign that was run without terms because nobody thought anybody would take it serious. I have not found a way to get a jet yet. However, you can go and find old marketing campaign pages that nobody retired properly that could actually create a potential business risk. And just really, they all come together for success. Like marketing, you're driving people, you're making this brand promise and you're getting people interested. The website needs to honor that promise. And it only does that when we work together. And again, that's where I can have devs and I can have marketers coming together in one place, like all of this data to see how important it is for everyone that's involved. We really have to think outside the box there. We really have to make sure that we're honoring the brand promise soup to nuts and that we're sharing information.
In fact, it might be a bit of a kind of exaggerated way slightly of saying it. If Google indexes them all and Chrome is there to render them all, you should have Lumar to audit them all and consolidate all of these different areas of becoming successful online. But I want to take it even higher a notch, a little bit, up the ante, actually. So let's say that you've come in one morning and your boss, you've fixed all security issues, your SEO is top-notch, your loading performance metrics are all green and everything is dandy, and you're able to produce these reports under the same framework and the data is consistent. But today's your boss asking, I want to find out if the reviews left on each of the products on the site, are they positive? Are they negative? I want to know each of those products, how many positive, how many negatives do they have? I want you to extract keywords from those negatives and positives and find crossover elements and give me the common negative themes people have and common positive things that people have to say about the particular product. That's suddenly, okay, that's no longer security, that's not performance, that's not anything we talked about. What do we do now? Do we need to build a crawler ourselves? Which tool outlet does this? Is there a tool that does this? Is there machine learning or natural language processing? And if it does, would it integrate with everything else that we have done? Can I query that data the same way I do for my security? Can I have CI integration for monitoring that? And I am very pleased to let everybody here know that, in fact, the way we have achieved these consolidations of security, accessibility, SEO is through an abstraction from our crawler to create a command line interface, which actually encapsulates all the metrics that you would want to produce on top of any resource, whether it be audio, an image buffer, the HTML page, which we would use, for example, for security, accessibility testing, or SEO testing. And we are going to make that same command line interface available to all of our customers so they can log in, build Node.js applications, say very similar to an AWS Lambda function, which would receive as input, depending on the resource you're targeting, the HTML and the header and the response object from a document, or a buffer from an image and headers, and you will be able to codify whatever metric you want to extract from the crawler. So in this particular case, you might want to use a well-known natural language processing library like Natural from the Node.js open source community. You would integrate that, you will extract your reviews, you're able to assign them a weight based on the sentiment that they have, maybe use TF-IDF to extract the keywords, and then find parallels between the different keywords across and build the common positive and the common negative themes that are about the product. And that is really exciting kind of new world that we're looking forward, not only for people to benefit from consolidation of all these major main health audit verticals that we are including as battery included, such as security, accessibility, etc., but also see what our users are going to come up with by innovating on our CLI and writing the next generation of Lumar applications. You're on mute again, Ashley. I think you're going to
I lost my tab. I did not have a great experience with Slack because it just booted me out, and I had a little panic there. I actually think the sentiment analysis thing is interesting because I sell some stuff on Etsy, and they do like a tiny little pinch, like a little toe into the ice cold water experience where they sort your feedback in terms of, I think it's like product, customer experience, and communication by just grabbing a few of those keywords. And I feel like what the CLI capacity and the customization allows folks to do here is to design those own words, right? Because they're not going to be the same for you as they are for everyone else. And to expand it quite a bit, because depending on what you're working on, they may not say something like fast shipping, right? There may be some totally different types of analysis. Maybe you're working in the financial sector and people are leaving comments about like speed to news. Did you report on the IPOs correctly? Is your feed with stock indices? Like, is it updating as quickly as it should, et cetera, things like that. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at that. And I'm really excited to see what you do with it personally and what the company does with it in the future too.
It's really interesting because, you know, you could probably, any kind of decent, even junior developer would be able to run few scripts, extract some metrics from the page, but it is the very first time in the world that something like this is in the hands of anyone who would want to use it and is able to be scaled for millions and millions of web pages. And you're able to query that data in a really fast way. And that's really what's groundbreaking here.
Yeah. And I hope that you are all finding some of this inspiring. I mean, we've taken on a lot of this as a company to build this out because scale is really fascinating for us. And that's what we want to focus on. I'm going back just one second. My slides. But the main thing is just, you know, web intelligence. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than all of it. It's, you know, I've been a technical SEO for almost 20 years. The age, it shows. But we were always kind of siloed. We were like this little lump sometimes on the side of engineering and dev, sometimes marketing, sometimes business development. And by coming across this whole premise of website intelligence, it really seems to pull everything together, because in order for a site to be successful, it's a hell of a lot more than just one job role. It takes a lot. It is an orchestra. And the data that's coming in are like those music sheets, and the command center is really getting everyone together to work together. And so that's the vision we have. And whether you, of course, we love our clients, please, like Lumar solves a lot of problems. Come check it out, come join us. But even if you don't, I hope that you found some of this inspiring ways to have talks with people on your team, or ways to start looking at your data just a little bit differently. And I know we have a poll coming up. All right.
Yes, we do.
Thank you, Lauren. There you are. Hi.
I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. Who is responsible for accessibility in your clients' organizations? So, do you have an internal accessibility expert, the UX team, tech SEOs? Oh, and the slide there's dev, but there's no dev on the poll itself. Let's pull dev under tech SEOs or maybe other. An outside consultant or other. So if everyone that's in the webinar can please go ahead and fill this in, it would be fantastic. It will help Ali and Ashley get a better idea of exactly who's on right now and how your organization or your clients' organizations are set up. And it's really good data at the end of the day as well. So it looks like we have most coming in. I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to go ahead and fill out the poll if you haven't yet. And I'm going to go ahead and close it right now.
Awesome.
So
I'm excited. What's it going to say?
96 responses. The bulk, 32% tech SEO is responsible for accessibility. And then 27% comes in at other. So if you filled out other for the poll, go ahead in the chat box right now and just write like who other actually is. Is it development? Is it just someone at the company that just happens to be doing this along with all their other tasks, et cetera, et cetera. And then UX is 24%, followed by an internal accessibility expert, only 14% have, and then outside consultants at 3%. Any thoughts there on the results?
I think it kind of reaffirms our multidisciplined approach that in order to achieve the best results on actioning, on listening to these, accessibility issues at the end of the day could be discovered using multiple actors. It could be discovered via SEO, technical SEO. It could be discovered via UX testing. There could be an accessibility team. I can see in the audience they're saying that there could be a marketing team that's actually doing that. But in the end, who will be fixing those issues? Who's going to action on those? And that's 9 out of 10 is going to be the developers. And what we are trying to do is to consolidate, basically bringing everyone, same as if you're using Jira for organizing all your work, is saying that Lumar is going to bring all these different audits and the ticketing, the prioritization, the benchmarking, the comparison, the filtering, the consumption of data, the export of that data, maybe to Tableau or a data lake for you to query that, should be done under the same umbrella. And that way, more people get talking, communication becomes easier. Maybe different terminologies will change and unify, and there will be like a ubiquitous language that will be about all areas of web health. So it kind of reaffirms that multi-actor approach that we have, and it's great to see.
I'm chatty in the chat, so thank you all for keeping questions coming. I really appreciate it because we now have some time for some Q&A with us, as well as there's
answer any question.
So are we going to have Matt from Lumar in the breakout room?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Hey,
how's it going? Hi, everyone. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, Matt, before we load this up?
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. Matt Hill here, Senior Solutions Consultant at Lumar, and I work with our sales team.
Amazing, amazing. So I believe behind the scenes, Heather is going to be launching the breakout room. If it's not launched for you, you can go ahead at the top of your screen and choose the breakout button. You see there. There's a video, audio, slides, and then breakout. So you can click on the breakout room where Matt's going to be going through demo and use cases of utilizing Lumar. And then Ashley and Ali, we're going to utilize this chance to go ahead and go over some of the questions which came in today. So if any of you are still in the Q&A, and I see the chat has kind of stopped, so it looks like a lot of folks, if you're in breakout, go ahead and type breakout in the chat. If you're still here in the Q&A, just type in you're still here. So we're going to go ahead and start on the questions as they come in.
Great.
Beginning with, if I have a website that takes more than 3 seconds to load, can we evaluate my losses in money for a traffic of 20,000 visitors per month? So if the website's taking too long to load, maybe just because any accessibility issues or generalized rendering issues, how can the losses from a revenue perspective, which I really like that you got into a little bit of about how accessibility helps with conversion, right? So how can the losses from a revenue perspective for a high traffic site be calculated when it comes to taking too long for the site to load?
So I'll take a stab at this one first. I'm actually going to post in a marketing blog here. So through Google, Think with Google, they have different areas of the world that they have data specific to that. But I like using this because they put a lot of their case studies specific to data with performance there. And sometimes when you're asking, C-level for money to fix performance, what they want to see is other people that have done it. And what the return will actually be. So they have some general statistics, and I am terrible at math, but there are some out there that's like every extra millisecond equals this much lost in dollar. But there are formulas out there that folks have done. And so you just have to plug in your traffic and your conversion rate and then your average dollar amount per conversion, if that makes sense. And then this blog, as well as tons of other great case studies that folks have done, I would go look for multiple sources. I'm like a 3 sources and take the average kind of gal, but you can run the calculation for yourself. That would be where I would start. And yes, you can show a return. I kind of hate that question personally because I'm like, no, let's just make the site better. But hey, we have to make money too. So a lot of it is going to be assigning some numbers that are generalizations. So as long as you are disclosing that, then I think you can have some of these predictions on how it can affect revenue. We just always have to disclose that Google's a fickle mistress and who knows what they're going to do tomorrow.
Very true, especially right now, especially at this time. Yeah, and I just went to Think with Google and the consumer insights about mobile site load time statistics. And according to Google, 53% of visits are abandoned if a mobile site takes longer than 3 seconds to load.
I knew you'd have the data, Lauren. You're the best.
53%, quite a bit, the majority. Also, according to Google, 54% of people say that phones reduce stress and or anxiety in their lives, which is interesting as well. However, that 53% are probably stressed and anxious when they're trying to load your site and it's not loading. So not only is this people that may be abandoning your website, but they may have some anxiety creeping up due to your website performance as well. One question that also came in was, could you go a little bit more into how to utilize the loss of conversions due to accessibility as a business case to greenlight project internally?
So yeah, that is a tricky one. It's the same thing where you're going to have to make some generalizations and pull some of that data out, depending on if you're going for like the, hey, we're doing it because we're good people, or the, hey, we're doing it because we're making money, or even the litigation one. You've got some really specific data points in there. And so we use the WCAG 2.0 guidelines, and they actually produce a lot of studies and have a lot of international data as well. But to me, you have to lean on some sources higher than yourselves and be able to show some of that. And unfortunately, a lot of companies don't disclose their lawsuits. You can find a lot, but like we have talked to clients, we're like, hey, have you ever had a lawsuit? They're like, girl, we've had 15 a year. Like it happens all the time and they can lose money. So when you're trying to sell it internally, I would make sure that you lean on the 2 bigger ramifications, one being the missed opportunity for money, but then the actual big liability of losing some of the company's established money as well. There are some really good presentations out there, some folks who have spoken on it. Ruth Everett, who was on my team for a while, has a really good presentation out there and has talked about it a lot. And there's some other good folks. So I would go gather sources. It's not that you don't have the exact right answer. Like you may be the most brilliant person in accessibility, but Especially if you're a woman in tech, you know that bringing additional sources helps to convince people that, you know, your effort is worthwhile.
I do have a little kind of legal story to do with a client that I cannot name, but is a fairly big name. And, you know, for in America, it's called the California privacy law. In Europe, it's called GDPR, but basically protecting privacy. And you have to show a pop-up to your user to give consent for you to store information in the cookies. And that may come with a particular notice that this is for 6 months and your consent has to expire after 6 months. And we had a particular customer that they have third-party tools like Tag Manager, and that is injecting their own cookies for the persistence of the functionality of whatever Tag Manager is including. And they need to have an automated solution that checks all these thousands of domains on a weekly basis in order to point out if any of those third-party cookies go beyond the date of expiry of consent. And if any cookie from those third parties lasts longer, that's open to a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's tricky. So many plugins in different roles, and usually it's like the GDM, the tag manager that would push, like, gives so many different people access to your site. Like we see that when they're doing like, I forget the word, but when you're essentially have that interim server through services that'll help you push stuff on the edge of the sites. They're not hitting your server at all, but they're able to essentially wrap a shell around it and have different cool functions. Or there are companies out there that like, yeah, we'll let you edit this and this and this on your site without ever talking to your devs. Figure out how they're doing that, because anything that's done on the edge can also introduce some of those insecurities and cause accessibility issues.
Very interesting. You had talked about Google Lens a bit with this, right? And there's a lot of news that came out about Google Lens in the past 2 days. Not sure how on top of it you've been, because I haven't been myself, but basically the multi-search features, screen search, everything else to just not identify what you're pointing the camera at, but what's on your screen, right? Which is kind of wild. How important is Google Lens? Like, where do you see Google Lens going long term? Because it seems like they're putting a lot more emphasis on Lens itself. And just as kind of a reminder, how can website owners, besides really connecting on image libraries and defining images, like, does this go beyond the alt attribute? Or are there other kinds of attributes or tags or whatever it may be that help Google Lens, or are we just like handing it over to Google to figure out now because they're just looking at everything because they've been trained up on CAPTCHA so well over the past decade?
I love all the free training we gave them on that. No, really though, it kept me, like, it was fun to help with CAPTCHA stuff. So I have had a doozy of a week and haven't caught up. So you might know stuff that I don't know, but I am a very frequent user of Lens. And there are a few things that I've noticed. The first thing is, if you're an e-com, it's going to push you to take good pictures of your product, and you should have unique pictures of your product. This actually goes along really well with Google's update, where they're pushing very hard on reviews that live on your site from real people with real images of their own, right? They want to find something truly authentic. So going in and just having, using a platform that pulls reviews from a bunch of other sites that have it, or using product images that are the exact same ones that, like, the actual creator of, well, let's say if it was a manufacturer of clothing, if they send everyone the exact same 4 pictures, take 4 more of your own. Things like that. Because what they really want to see is authentic images, really high quality images. It's not just the alt text, it's the size, it's how accessible they are. It's, if they have a recognizable file name. A lot of the times your pictures may include product names. Like I use the Home Depot example a lot. They actually have some cool stuff built into their own app that felt like a precursor to Lens. Their team does really cool stuff.
I think as search is growing up one more time, it's another one of those evolution points where search is growing up. Everybody's gearing up for more AI involvement in search, whether it's like the visual search, whether it's Bing embedding ChatGPT. But there are a lot of innovative new tools coming into search, and that allows and opens your web contents for being used in ways you didn't anticipate. So as Ashley was talking about this, having the correct metadata, alt tag, schema.org, microdata, JSON LD, correctly describing those resources and their connection with other elements on the web or websites, like through thoroughly understanding those standards and implementing them correctly is going to put you in an advantage, rather than assuming that it's always the page being browsed through the browser.
Speaking of search growing up and the page being browsed, I'm fairly excited about ChatGPT and it being integrated into Bing, but and then also Google coming out with Bard, which will be kind of interesting to see what happens there. Neva AI, etc. But I think what excites me more is these AI conversational solutions being added to on-site search, right? Like, what can you look for on site, or what kind of assistant, almost like walking into a store and having a shopping assistant or a personal assistant.
Yeah.
Which kind of got me thinking, like, how important is on-site search in terms of the big picture? Is that something that's often overlooked by people just using a default search button on the site, and maybe that defaulting to what would be a normal search solution? Or sometimes I'll see on e-commerce sites, a search box will have images while you're typing, or products while you're typing, or reviews while you're typing. So what are some overlooked advantages to doing more with on-site search, especially as we get into 2023?
Yeah. Well, I can definitely tell you a thing or two about it, because we actually have customers who use us to create indexes for their internal search engine. And as someone who makes these indexes, I can not reveal too much technically, but I can tell you quite a few of them have AI involved in them. So website search for those clients that we see that have lots of domains, or maybe lots of connected group of domains, their internal searches are getting very sophisticated. And the reason for that is that using Google indexing, just letting it be from what Google collects from the page and a snippet, is not good enough for interpretation of the information they would like to see in the search results. So actually the pipeline of what you crawl and then how you produce those indexes is quite sophisticated. That's what we are seeing on our side.
Yeah, I also think that it's a data engine, right? And I think that you can, if you're collecting data appropriately from it, you can see how users are talking about your content, which then you should feed into your content, right? Like if you're a travel company and they were searching for hotel rooms and you kept calling it accommodations, like it's good to know what words they're using to describe your terms. I do think it's worth investing in a good search, especially if you're an e-com and not just using an open solution where you don't control any of it, because there are going to be products that you may want to promote that might be most important to you, that are able to drive more profit, or that you have more stock from. So I like to think of it as another way to get data, kind of like how we talked about cataloging images. And if people are really paying attention to and getting all the details on images, it's super valuable. Get as much information as you can from search. Yeah. And as a user, I just love a good
search. It could be simply, adding that internal organizational knowledge to the search index. Like you might collect a lot of names, but in fact, your users might be searching, I want to see all the talks that were given by sales engineers this month. So then you want to enrich that list with titles that you might have on the database of the employees. So there's a lot of different data sources involved to enrich that initial indexed information or crawled information to make it perfect for an organizational search.
And I'm gonna say this. I'm a little biased, although I've had a hell of a lot of fun with ChatGPT. Input. It all depends on input, right? So how things are trained, and so you have to think about the accessibility